Hello, my dear children. How are you all? Are you all keeping well and happy? Shall we move on to learn another lesson on our Guru Gedar Rupahini program? And so far, we have been teaching you a lot of poems and stories on appreciation of English literary texts. Today too, I am going to teach you another interesting story for you. So, can you think of the stories that we have got to study and that so far we have not discussed or learned? Yes, that is something to do with a kind of disaster and thereafter some painful memories were in a book as a story. So, this is not something that we can read with very much happiness, but still it tells us so many things about life, right. So, can you think of the story that we are going to learn today? Fine. Let us see. An extract from Wave, a memoir of life after the tsunami. Sonali Dharaniyagala. So, this is a Sri Lankan writer, and when I give you the information about her, I am sure that you will get an impression about her life, right. So, here what is given as a prelude or a kind of introduction to her book, because she has written that book Wave, and here we are taking just an extract from it. Remember that, not the whole thing, right. So, that story is something to tell about that fatal moment of her life. Right, let us read what is there. Wave is a brutal but lyrically written account of the awful moment and the grief-crazed months after, as she learned to live with her almost unbearable losses. So, once you read these lines, so you get a kind of feeling that is something to do with sadness and unbearable loss. So, what is this unbearable loss? We are going to find some characters in the story and we get to know that she is going to miss all of them, right. So, here this is one of the best examples to talk about sympathy and empathy both. Remember that, children. So, with all these ideas in mind, let us move on to read the story, but still just like I do for this introduction of the writer, I have taken some information about her and let us read. She is a Sri Lankan writer, born in 1964 in Colombo. She is a memoirist and economist. She married another economist, Stephen Lisenberg. So, that very name hints you that he is not a Sri Lankan, right. Then, what is more about her? Studied at the Cambridge University, has a doctorate from the University of Oxford. She is on the faculty of the Department of Economics at SOA's University of London. Let me read. A research scholar at Columbia University, New York City. She lives in New York City and London. Up to now, when you hear all these things, you understand that she is not a lady who resides in Sri Lanka, and this fateful incident she had to meet with when she was in one of her vacations, right. Let us talk about it later, but all these things suggest that she is a very educated lady. At the same time, she is somebody who is away from the motherland. So, certain things in life and certain ideas that we hear or we read in the story will be based on her experience or this foreign cultural experience, we will say, right. So, while when she was on a vacation at Sri Lanka's Yala National Park in 2004, she lost her 2 sons, her parents, best friend and the mother of her best friend. So, that is why at the beginning, so unbearable losses. So, her whole life of course was lost for her. She was the only survivor in her family in that devastating waves that hit Sri Lanka. And do you know the particular date and the year? Now, of course, I mentioned about the year. Then do you know about tsunami that hit Sri Lanka some years back, a long time ago, if say like 2004 and 2021, 17 years back we will say, right. On the advice of the therapist who helped her deal with her devastating loss in the tsunami, had suggested her to write down her memories. So, that is why this book came out as Wave. So, to get rid of her suffering and painful memories that was like a trauma in her mind, made her restless, of course. So, as a result of that, because of the therapist she met fortunately suggested her to release her mind after writing this. Memories of her as a book, it brought her kind of relief. And think of writing her own personal experience, that is something bitter, very unpleasant, as the book is also a kind of great thing, heroic deed we will say, right, do not you think so? Right. First of all, shall we look at the word memoir? Memoir is a historical account of written events from personal knowledge. So, some kind of historical account. So, the word account is to show kind of like details, right. So, not the account that you have in the back, a historical account of written events from personal knowledge, because when you do literature, you have to use these words as well. So, be familiar with this type of words when you are writing your answers as well. Fine. So, I think you have a clear idea of what a memoir is, right. Then tsunami, the picture I have included of course is where this tsunami hit somewhere in Sri Lanka called Lunava, and that how it has destroyed the whole thing. So, it shows the destructive effect or the destruction that it has brought. In December 2014, on 26th, right after the Christmas Day, Indian Ocean tsunami of course affected Sri Lanka very badly. How many of you know about this incident? Is this the first time you heard it? It cannot be. How many of you were taking an interest to know more about this, right? So, this story of course reveals us a kind of picture and a real experience of somebody who faced such a situation. So, when all the others who have faced the same disaster might be getting a kind of reminiscence or kind of recalling their memories as well, right. So, let me move ahead. The given excerpt in your book begins with the words, "Oh my God, the sea is coming in." That is what she said. So, here the story begins with a clue, sea is coming in, but who said it? She said. Pronoun she. Actually, as readers, when we read this, we get an idea. This is of course she, because female figure or a character, and what is this relationship of this character she to Sonali, right. So, this is an exclamation made by her friend really. That is why if you can remember that Sonali lost her best friend as well, right. Then Next one. You hardly notice the ocean at all is what Sonali says in that particular situation, right. So, in the story of course. So, you hardly notice the ocean at all. From the place that they were holidaying in that hotel, the sea was somewhat far away and directly, like could not see the ocean at all. But in the story, we see how this aggressive kind of devastative sea waves came into the land, right. So, submerging, destroying everything on its way. Fine. Did you understand it, how serious it is, right, and how violent it is? Fine. The boys had packed their Christmas gifts into red bags, written their names in each with permanent marker. So, these two lines of course are not in your textbook in the excerpt, but of course I took them from her book. So, there, think of this, right after the Christmas day, these children had packed their Christmas gifts in 2 bags and writing their names in each bag with permanent marker. So, their names were just written on that bag itself. They could not live, of course. So, how ironical these things, how sorrowful when we hear these things. Small children not knowing anything, only meant to play and enjoy, they went there, right. So, seeing the wave, they could collect nothing. What they could was to run for life with Sonali, right. So, think of these things, children. Now, right at the end of the session, also my lesson, I have included some other information to show you how much she was suffering or how much she felt because of these things, right. So, we will read those things later after studying what is given for you to study in the textbook, right. So, these are some additional information I have included. One thing is for you to know about this and to feel really deeply feel about these characters and their suffering, and in a situation like this, how much people are going to feel and how much they are going to miss in life, right. Then let us move on and read what is there. When Sonali's friend said, "The sea is coming," where were the 2 children, Vic and Mali? They were the 2 sons, right. Her husband Steve. Of course, children, if you have read the story, you know the answers for these 2 questions, right. So, now after you finish listening to my lesson today, if you have not so far read this story, start reading it and underline or note down the particular lines that I have quoted in my lesson and read this, because otherwise you won't be able to understand this, like if you are not familiar with the lines, you can't get the idea right after I said the things, because you have to read the story. I have not included all the lines, right. So, the kids were out with the ladies and playing with the toys. Where was the husband? That is the next question. Now, think of this, children were out playing with toys. They collected their toys and came. Now, they were very happy and enjoying their life, but suddenly think of the changes in the weather and how much they lost, right. The kids were out with the ladies and playing with the toys. Her husband was in the bathroom and she called him out to see this strange event. This was of course very strange, because the sea waves were not usually coming up to that far. So, she was shouting or she was yelling, "Come out, Steve, I want to show you something odd." Now, think of that word, I have highlighted it in another color, odd. to mean something unusual or not natural, not familiar with like, right? Is it clear? Come out, Steve. I want to show you something odd. Here, as readers, we understand that what is going to happen or what she is going to explain is not something that people have experienced previously. It is presented as something not familiar, something strange, something unusual, right? Then, why was it? Now, the froth of a wave had scaled up the slope and was nearing the tall conifers that were halfway between our room and the water's edge. Now, I have included the picture of a conifers. Now, these are some tall trees with thorny like leaves, but still it suggests the height of it, and these waters were nearing these plants as well. They were somewhat closer to the room and the water's edge, in between. So, the distance was not that far. So, up to that point, sea waves were coming or moving towards, right. So, when you read these lines, you get a visual imagery in your mind and kind of suspension, what, oh my God, what's going to happen next, right. So, here think of the emotions of the people who really experience this. So, they know something is going to happen and they have not experienced that before, right. In a minute, Steve muttered with no intention of rushing out. Is that quite all right, children? The one who is in the bathroom, when he was called out, not knowing anything about this, what she noticed, what she heard the other friend said. In a minute, not having any intention to rushing out. Note the difference in the reaction of these two characters. Urgency that Sonali had in her mind and the idea, or like that Steve is delaying it because he doesn't have any idea about rising of seawater. That is quite natural for a person who has not seen anything strange, will take his own time. But of course, Sonali was panic. She was feeling that something strange is going to happen, right. So, then this means this event was quite unexpected and strange as well. Changing in sea waters was something unexpected. People were doing their things leisurely at their holiday resorts, right. So, you can remember the two kids were playing with their toys that they packed the previous day, and then Steve was also having a shower in the bathroom, right. So, then they were all having their ordinary way of life, but sudden rise of this sea water changed everything, right. So, made them suffer for their entire life. So, there is a lesson, there is something that the nature teaches us for life. So, we will discuss about it later, but I like if any one of you can think of what I am going to ask you, or what lesson that the nature teaches you, right. So, is it clear to you the question? So, with all these things, the nature itself tells us or teaches us a serious lesson. Fine. Let us move on to the next slide and see. The foam turned into waves. Now, earlier it was like foams. Now, if you have seen this, after sea waves, they are kind of like foam, right. When it moves from the beach, we can see some bubbles, foam. So, later on this foam turned into waves, waves leaping over the ridge where the beach ended. This was not normal. The sea never came in this far, right, came this far in. So, beach and the distance and the hotel, right. So, then they knew that usually the sea water never comes in like this. Waves not receding or dissolving. The waves were not receding, moving back towards the sea or dissolving now after waves hit on the shore, of course, they dissolve. There is no more wave, but another wave comes, hits on the shore, again moves back. But they could not see something like that was happening. That is why she says, waves not receding or dissolving, closer now, brown and grey, brown or grey. She is confused even to give the colors, brown and grey, brown or grey. So, this brown color sea waves. So, something different in color as well. So, washing off everything like idea, right, soil and all the things on its way, fine. Did you understand the feelings or the terrible idea that these people might have got in their mind, because it is something to do with a disaster and their mental state, their emotions, their feelings. So, with all these bad memories, Sonali was suffering, and this memoir, she was writing this, and then only she could release her mind to a certain extent. Fine. Let's read more. What do these two quotations tell us, children? So, I was taking two quotations from the extract given in your textbook really. So, do you want to have a look again? The foam turned into waves, waves leaping over the ridge where the beach ended. This was not normal. The sea never came this far in. The other one, waves not receding or dissolving, closer now, brown and grey, brown and grey. Right, remember. The unusual sudden change of the waves, one thing is that. The terror or fear that one feel or get when I witness something like this. So, they can't enjoy, right, no happy feelings, terror, fear comes to their mind. If you happen to see something like this, what would you do? That is my question. Think of your answer. It depends. If you are brave, you will think of some answers. If you are not so strong, you may feel it differently. So, anyway, see how these people reacted is very important, right? If you happen to see something like this, what would you do? And let's see what these people did, right? So, see whether these two things, how you thought and how they did, are different or same, right? All these waves now charging, churning, suddenly furious, suddenly menacing. You know that menacing means destroying everything idea, right? So, very aggressive, eating up all what is on its way like. I grabbed Vic and Molly and we all ran out the front door. So, that was the reaction. So, she could no more see all these things. She noticed that very soon they are going to be in trouble. So, what she could do was to grab the children and take them, right. So, we had no time. We had to be fast. I knew that. But I did not know what I was fleeing from. That is very important. But I did not know what I was fleeing from. Actually, none of these people had an idea about tsunami, because it was the first time that people in our generation experienced something like tsunami. Maybe something similar to that you have heard in the stories of that historical event where Princess Vihara Mahadevi went on boat all alone to save the country. So, that is also might be a kind of tsunami, right. But anyway, so this is some kind of new experience for all these people, and they did not have a least idea of what is this, but anyway they were running because they understood that something is going to happen and that is not pleasant and something destructive, dangerous, right. Then what happened? What ideas are conveyed in this last sentence, my dear children? Can you remember the line? Let us read it once again. But I did not know what I was fleeing from, right. The natural instinct of run for life, because now they all felt that something is going to happen that is dangerous, something unusual, the sea waves are not coming that far in. So, idea that is naturally how our body suggests us. Run for life, you are in danger, you are in threat. Can you remember the poem? A bird came down a walk. Soon after offering the crumb, the bird's natural instinct hinted it, and it unrolled its feathers and started roving his homeward journey. So likewise, natural instinct hinted these people also to run for life. Threat they had for their lives, they understood that. So kind of threat they had for their life. Fear and terror that intensified the reaction of the mother with her love for the kids. Right? With her love for the kids, she grabbed her children and started running. So it shows motherly love, reaction of a mother with her affection. So she did not wait for her husband to come out. True that, she called him, right? Actually, he joined them soon after they started running, because he told that in a minute he was coming out. So anyway, by that time, Sonali had started running away. Then, while she was running, of course, she did certain things, right? As Sri Lankans, we feel it a bit seriously, really. She too felt it later on, but what does it tell us? Let's discuss this thing, right? What are the characters we meet in the story other than Sonali with her husband and 2 sons, right? So we know definitely there was her friend, but she started running with her 2 kids and called her husband. So definitely that other lady or the girl might have run with them. Then Sonali's parents, the jeep driver, character called Olantha, and Olantha's parent Beulah and Anton, right? So these are some other characters we meet, and these characters also are important because they too tell us certain things through their behavior, right? So let's learn all these things. Though this is a very unhappy story, in that unhappy story we learn certain other things as well. Throughout the story we find that how people react in such panic or sudden disaster, right? Then we find these characters are oscillating between being selfish and selfless. Oscillating means moving from one end to the other, oscillating between being selfish and selfless. So with the reactions, with the actions of people, we can just think whether they show a kind of selfish behavior or selfless behavior, fine? So I showed you the characters. Sonali, Sonali's 2 sons, husband Steve, Sonali's parents, and then Olantha and her parents, fine. Let's move on. We notice how Steve and Sonali never slowed down for any reason, because when you read the lines in the story, you will understand. Now, after calling Steve, Sonali started running, grabbing the 2 children. Steve was also following them. He was asking Sonali to hand over one of the kids to him, but Sonali refused that. Sonali thought that even to slow down for such a thing, to hand over one of the 2 sons to her husband, will delay their escape, right? So she didn't want to stop and hand over the child. So it shows how quick she was to run for life or to reach safety. At the same time, her love for these kids, and as a mother, and personally for her life as well, maybe, right? So then we understand with this the selfless parental love idea of that, and sacrifice and readiness of the parents to save their children, to look after their children, and at the same time, at times, they were selfish too. We will discuss whether they were selfish in certain events. Right. What can you say about driver's character? So, you hear and you meet a driver there, right? So, how he helped these people. What can you say about driver's character? He too is supportive, selfless and selfish both. So, here again you get the word selfish, selfless. So, I told you these characters were oscillating between selfish and selfless. I think the idea is clear to you, and I have taken some lines in the book, and you have to think whether these particular lines tells us of a selfish behavior or selfless behavior, right? I didn't stop for my parents, children. That's what I told you as Sri Lankans. So, in our culture, so here she says, I didn't stop for my parents. Think of this, right? So, but just before that, I told you that she was not ready to waste a second to slow down her speed to hand over one of the children to her own husband, right? So, here again we understand that she has not stopped to call her parents. So, think of it, a point, kind of a controversial point, we will say, whether she was right there or whether she was wrong, because now we see her sacrifice, her quick motion as a mother to save her children. But think of her parents, those two also had done something for her in her childhood as her parents. So, her reaction here, not stopping to call her parents, how much you feel about it and how much ethical it is like, and how much she suffered at the end for not, and after getting back to her home in Colombo. I will talk about that, right? The boys ran fast as I did. So, again they were keeping the same pace with the mother. They didn't stumble or fall. Now, being kids, now they were running in a panic. Now, they were in a hurry to move to a safety place. They were quitting for life. They were barefooted. They were barefoot. That means they were not wearing slippers or shoes or anything. But they didn't slow down because stones or thorns were hurting them. Now, that road that they were running, or the driveway that they were running, is full of thorns and stones. They were not wearing any shoes. Then they didn't stop, they didn't slow down, they were running. So, what does it tell us? They too had that feeling that they should go to a safety place, and the main focus is that they have given that pain and everything the second place. First place is to save their lives, right? So, that is the way that we have to think of. Being small children, they teach us this lesson. Some of you, of course, may not be ready to do so, and of course, if it were you, sometimes you may start grumbling, you may start slowing down. But think of these people, they tell us something. First, life, save it. Second place is this, comforts, right? Our feet were loud, though I couldn't hear them slamming the ground. So, that again shows that they were giving priority to what they do, and they do not care for all the other things, and they do not actually feel, right? Then let us move on. What do you think of Sonali not stopping for her parents? Is she right? Yes or no? I give that particular question to you. Read the text well, and with the rest of the things I discuss in the story, you decide, and you can develop your own arguments, right? So, let us move on. We find that she repents at the end, children. We didn't get Archie and Sia, I yelled to Steve. So, these things didn't take years, children. So, very quick motions, very quick movements, right? So, then so leaving them, and after that getting on to the jeep, and while they were moving ahead to a safety place, she feels that she didn't call her parents. So then she says that we didn't get Archie and Sia. I yelled to Steve, her husband. Now see the address that she gives, Archie and Sia. From the perspective of the children that she says, she doesn't say that my mother and father. So it shows that her children's love for their grandparents and the usual way that they were addressing Sonali's mother. Isn't it, children? Can't we come to that decision, or can't we make that conclusion? Now see that word. So Archie and Sia. So love those children had for their grandparents. So I have told you several times, when you do literature, pay attention to each and every word and try to look at that in a different way, because it contains full of meaning other than the word meaning, right? I yelled to Steve. This made Vikram cry. Vikram is that Vic, right? Pet name. Vikram cry, and Steve held on to him. Steve was holding him, right? So Archie and Sia will be okay. They will come later. They will come. Look at that repetition. They were, of course, making a decision. They were imagining, they were thinking that their Sonali's parents will be all right and will be safe, right? Because now this comes in the story very late, but I just added this here next to her leaving, because I can easily discuss, right? So after they reach to a safety place, they see that Sonali could not see the sea water anymore. So she thought that that wave is okay and nothing is going to be wrong. But soon after that, the second wave came. So they made a wrong decision, right? So these were the thoughts of these people, because they were thinking of them positively. They might have got a kind of safety, right? So then I had image of my father walking out of the hotel. There were puddles everywhere. Puddles means that water collected pits like. He had his trousers rolled up. I will ring Ma on her mobile as soon as I get to a phone, I thought. This is what Sonali thought to relieve her heart. She too knew that she didn't call her parents, but to relieve her mind with all these ideas, they will come, so that confirmation was a relief, right? So even children accepted the father's words. So another point that we are going to discuss is the characters of these children. So what they teach us. So before that, we'll finish this. I will ring Ma on her mobile as soon as I get to a phone, I thought. Now a person who is coming to holiday in a hotel, why can't she have a phone in her hand? So it tells us that children, they had waited for nothing. They had just ran out of the place without taking any valuables. They had not collected anything, even the phone, right? What they wanted is to run out of the place. So that is why she says, when I get to a phone, I will call my Ma on her mobile. So think of that communication, right? Facilities are there, but only thing that she has not taken her phone. That is the idea that we get with this line. Fine. Let's move on. What can you say about the two sons? Just a little while ago, I told you that we are going to discuss about them. So definitely they are courageous, because now they were running with the same speed that their mother did. And even if the thorns and the stones were some kind of disturbance to their barefoot, without any shoes, without any slippers when they were running, but they were very courageous. At the same time, they were very strong. And because of their terrified thoughts and feelings, they might have done so, very obedient. And they were very respectful of their parents' words, and they believe, they trust their parents like. They were very helpful. If they were dragging, if they were slowing down, they could not run like this, of course. Do you agree? Do you think that the ideas that I told you or put forward are right? Yes? If they were like very lethargic, not ready to run, not very strong like, these things wouldn't have been a reality. They were all running. At the same time, they were very helpful, very supportive to their parents, because without complaining, without grumbling, they ran. They are flexible. Without slippers, without shoes, they were ready to run on a gravel road, thorny road. And at the same time, they seem to be very loving and caring. When they hear the word of Archie and Sia, they started crying because they missed them. So that shows that they are very loving and caring children, right? Fine children. So we have to be somebody like that. We have to respect our elders, and we have to show our love and kindness towards them, and flexibility at times, helpful, supportive. All these things are very positive ideas that we have to have in our minds. Then only we can prosper as a family, as a country, and everything, right? We'll move on. The jeep was waiting for us. Children, now the incident is when they were running, of course, out of the driveway, they could see a jeep, and that jeep was waiting for them. That shows that the driver was very kind, very supportive. They saw these people were running, and then he stopped the vehicle for them. I hadn't seen Olantha run with us. Her father too was in, right? So I hadn't seen Olantha run with us. So then that means that Olantha also had been running with them, but Sonali had not noticed. Not that she has not paid any attention, but she was paying attention to what she was doing only. Everything that happens around her was not felt by her. Okay. I think you can remember now, even the sound of their moving, though when they were running there was a big noise that she didn't hear, like she didn't feel it like. Then Beulah was hoisting herself to the jeep. So that means Beulah means Olantha's mother. So father is also there inside the jeep, Olantha also there. So children, now you may be wondering who these two characters, Olantha and her father. Maybe some other people who were holidaying in that hotel, and just Sonali and all these people started running, they too might have followed them, right? Beulah was hoisting herself to the jeep, and driver revved the engine. The jeep jerked forward, and she lost the grip, fell off. Very pathetic situation. Father and the daughter in the jeep. Mother is trying to get in, but she lost the grip and she fell. Think of a situation like that, in a panic or in a disaster situation like this, the way people react. So the driver was once kind enough, thoughtful enough, supportive enough to wait for Sonali and her children and the husband. But, and even Olantha and father, they too also had the same speed like. Then, but he could not wait until this lady gets in. So it shows that she too might have had the feeling of hurrying, right? So get to a safety soon as possible. So then what happened to this Beulah, mother of Olantha? Let's see, children. The driver didn't see this. I told him to stop. I kept yelling to him that she had fallen out, but he kept going. So is it a selfless or selfish? In a way, it shows a kind of like selfish. Still, when we think of the number of people in the jeep, in the vehicle, there are, including the driver, Sonali family, Sonali and the three others, Olantha, father, yes, really 7. So life of 1 and saving 7. So that might have been the attitude of the driver. Really, we don't know whether he was also rude, but anyway, he didn't stop. He kept on going. Beulah lay on the driveway and looked up as we pulled away. The jeep was moving and the lady was on the floor. Now think of that pathetic situation. We feel very sorry for her, Beulah's character as well. And we feel really if that happened to us like. So that is why I told you at the beginning, this story is the best example, one of the best examples to talk about empathy, sympathy, right? So here Again, we feel sorry for this Beulah's character. She half smiled in confusion, it seemed, like that pain, at the same time the hope, kind of like half a smile. Then what was the reaction of Beulah's father, children? Anton leaned out the back to reach Beulah and drag her up. So kind of like assistance to show his love, faith in her, to save her life. What he was doing is commendable, admirable, right? So it shows the love of Ollantha's father towards her mother, right, Beulah, and drag her up. So next one, think of it. What's going to happen? Those who have read the story, of course, know what happens. Let's see, those who have not read, what do you think of this? When he couldn't, he jumped out. So he was trying to take Beulah also into the jeep. So when he failed, when he couldn't, he too jumped out. So sacrifice, tremendous sacrifice, and it shows how much he loved that lady. Death together. If they can't save the life, the man also didn't want to save the life all alone. He tried to save or tried to take her too, but when he failed, he too joined the lady. So both of them might have got killed in this tsunami, devastating waves. But see that bond, see that love, mutual relationship, mutual understanding. Those are the most important human relationships. Human relations we have to have. We have to admire, right? But I didn't call out to the driver to wait for them. Now this time, Sonali is not ready to ask the driver to stop. So it shows again, tell me whether it is her selfish quality or selfless quality. Again, yes, she seems to show a kind of selfish quality. First thing is she didn't stop to call her parents. Now this time once she told, now second time she didn't give a chance. So the urgency or the earnest desire of her might have been to reach to a safety with her kids, right? So her self comes, her family comes first than other. Is it clear? The jeep was next after that. They were both on the gravel now, but I didn't call out the driver to wait for them. So after that they moved forward. So I told you that by now the first wave had hit and gone back, like. So she thought that everything is all right, normal. So then after that we were tilting from side, the water rising now, filling the jeep. Now water is coming inside the jeep, right? So we get kind of like suspension. Oh, I say, can't they save their lives? So just because I gave you some introduction, you know that those lives were destroyed. Then it came up to the chest. Steve, water came up to their chests, right? So in the jeep, it's full of water now. Steve and I lifted the boys as high as we could, right? Like holding them up from their armpits, shoulders, right? So they were lifting like this, they say. In the story, you read those lines. So it shows how much they were doing to save the life of those two kids. But ultimately, nobody could do anything. The jeep was floating. A sudden look of terror, eyes wide open, mouth gape. He saw something behind me that I could not see. That is what she mentions about the strange look that she noticed in her husband's face when the jeep started floating. So she says that she might have noted something that she could not see. One thing is jeep was overturning, like she could not turn back in the story, she says. The other thing is from the direction that she was seated in the jeep, it might be something like she has to turn back to see that. That suggests us that they were seated in the jeep face to face, opposite directions. Fine. Let's read what happens, children. Now here this is taken from one of the interviews. This is not included in your book excerpt, but I just added that for your information and to show this. how much she felt. I think he saw the wave when it was rising and it was coming at us. She says, the last I saw of Steve was that look on his face where he looked completely aghast, seeing something that I could not see. That was their final look. Thereafter, they two could not see each other. So, Terence, you look your last at me, something like that. So, there again, and even the oak tree just ask to sing your last song. Similarly, here it was the last look. So, see this separation, the pain and everything. Right? The jeep turned over my side. I was moving. I couldn't tell now. My body was curled up. I was spinning fast. She was in a big current like she was moving. Right? That was the end of the story in your book. So, I have included certain things, the themes. Human reaction to sudden panic and disaster is one particular theme. Human reactions. Now, I have taken certain lines to show you selfish, selfless. I was discussing with you human reaction to sudden panic and disaster. The unpredictability or uncertainty of nature. I told you that sudden changes in the seawater. Natural human instinct and tendency to put self before others. I was explaining you. She once asked the driver to stop, next time no. So, natural human instinct and tendency to put self before others. Right. I am going to discuss another point, children. How bravery, courage and self-controlled behavior and knowledge is capable of achieving. I went with Steve's father, Peter, and his sister Jane. This is something that I quoted from her story, original book, an excerpt given on a page. So, this is to show how much she felt and what she did when she saved her life and a kind of recovery that she had from after the incident or after the accident, right. I went with Steve's father, Peter, and his sister Jane on the 200-mile drive from Colombo. This was not the first time, she had been there several times, right. We had to stop often, so I could vomit. That means the distance was so far for her, like so huge for her, that she had some kind of sick mood. They started silently at the floor of the bathroom where Steve was when I saw the wave. So, she was showing all these places because she could see the what you call it, the ruins of the building, right. So, the floor was there, she says, good, and then she had shown the room that they were in and the children and everything and the bathroom even to show that her attachment to Steve, because it was the last place and she was showing it to Steve's father and sister. They stared silently at the floor of the bathroom where Steve was when I saw the wave. I stood there taunting the sea, our killer. So, she had been to the beach as well, and see that she says that our killer, the beach, come on then, why don't you rise now, higher, higher, swallow me up, shows her disappointment. How much she has felt and how much pain that is there in her mind for this separation, right. Swallow me too now, come rise, higher, higher, repetition. Right. So, these are not in the book, please. These are some lines taken from the same book, but not included in your syllabus. It was the back cover of a research report written by Steve and a colleague. It appeared right by Steve's father's foot. Here also, when he was somewhere there on the beach, certain miraculous things happened, and Steve's father could see a paper, and that paper of course shown to Sonali, and Sonali could identify it as her own husband's research report. So, moreover, she had been, after this hint or the clue, she had been digging to find some more other evidence or hints or some other things that she loved, her children loved. Finally, in that particular page, I found that she had found a shirt of the son that he was wearing the previous night or the day that they came there, and that was in the hotel like, and the color that was under the sand was intact, the same dark green color was there in the shirt. After she found that, of course, she had stopped it because it gives some kind of pain to her, I think. So, you have to read the story. If you happen to read this book, try to read it because it tells us the real trauma that she had and the suffering that she had, right. So, other than what was included in your book, I gave you this additional information to see and to feel how much we have to endure with the separation of loved ones, right. So, themes are important. Children, I think my effort to help you in understanding this particular text, Wave by Sonali Dharaniyagala, was useful to you and kind of help, then I think it's high time that I stop the lesson. Till I meet you next time, let me say goodbye and stay safe until then.